Welcome to another episode of GovCon Intelligence. My guest today is Robb Wong. Robb Wong, from 2017 to 2020, served in the Trump administration with SBA Administrator Linda McMahon as the government's leading advocate for small business contractors. During that period, federal small business utilization goals were exceeded for 4 consecutive years, and the prime and subcontracting market grew beyond $240 billion. Prior to that, he was working for one of the nation's earliest 8A companies in 1978. Then he was an attorney in SBA's general counsel's office from 1987 to 1993. A great office, one that I was a member of as well. And in between those and after his service with the Trump administration, he founded and grew a company called FedSolve, which is a platform supporting multiple high-performing small businesses across IT, professional services, and construction. Just want to list just a few of your accomplishments while you were at SBA. You formalized the WASB certification program. You initiated the transfer of the VA's service-disabled veteran-owned program to SBA. You authored the modern SBA Mentor Protege program. And you found a young attorney in the SBA General Counsel's office to bring up to be the Director of Procurement Policy. And I am forever thankful for that. Robb, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
So I want to get started with this Trump 2.0 and
Sure.
your experience when you were in Trump 1.0 and the idea that then you were trying to grow small business. You had new records for small business contracts. It seemed like every year you added $10 billion, you got close on the women-owned, actually achieved the women-owned goal one year and got close on the hub zone and service-disabled vet, increased that so that the Congress actually went and increased the goal even more because you were meeting it so many years. Is that what's happening right now? What is the emphasis within SBA as you see it from the outside running FedSolve?
So I think that this administration is doing it a little bit differently, but hopefully still being faithful to the same goals. I think that when I was there, you run things according to the law. Keep it within the law. If you don't like the law, then change the law. There's a process for that. But you don't resort to self-help and you don't ignore the law. And I think that we did a great job there. We came in, I think we had 21 IG investigations, and we cleared up all of them. But there were several of them that basically said that in our office in GCBD, we were occasionally ignoring the law. We're letting people in because not applying all of the factors that would apply. And so we cleaned those up, and then after we did those things, Mrs. McMahon, I have to say, Mrs. McMahon was tremendous. I'm not everybody's favorite. And she tolerated me pretty well, but she was probably the best boss I've ever had. She gave me all the support that she said she would. And she gave me a lot of latitude, but I hope that I provided a lot of value.
Speaking of Luke Mann, who is in the President's Cabinet, I want to show you something from another member of the President's Cabinet. So this is a memo from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth directing the Department of War to do a review of all small business set-aside, including 8A contracts, over $20 million. And they're reviewing it for cost efficiency. They're supposed to compare the prices that they're getting on those contracts versus market prices. That they're looking at limitations on subcontracting as well. But what you notice in this is it's not all contracts over $20 million. These are just small business contracts. So based on your experience in Trump 1.0, is Trump 2.0 really putting the screws specifically on small business? And why? This says it's DEI.
Yeah.
It's a DEI focus. The whole first page is about DEI.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of small businesses that are not DEI focused, and this is all small businesses.
So I have no opinion on this because I wasn't involved in it. My reaction to it, based on when it came out, I think that he parroted a lot of the language, the press release that was issued by SBA shortly before, I think within a day or two before.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the industry is missing. If you think about what happened, and unfortunately you were part of all of that, I think that if I have to be positive about this, SBA is going back to, with that press release, it's talking about how the 8A program will continue to be run. And that's great, because it means that it's everything that you and I have talked about a long time ago. But at the end of the day, the Small Business Act has everything that's basically good about small business and protection, small business utilization. That remains unchanged. So does 13 CFR. And then both of those supersede any presidential executive order and FAR rewrite. So I think that the program has always been good. And then if you look at what's happening, the industry has the feeling that the 8A program is going to go away. I think it's certainly going to be changed. I think there's a lot of pressure to change that. But I think that as long as the program is there, I think that the program is certainly critical to the United States and their procurement reform. If you think about this, I think the beginning of the first 6 months that's going to happen, right? If nothing else changes, first 6 months, everybody's going to probably be under the fear that if I'm a contracting officer, I'm going to get fired if I do anything other than no 8As, only best-in-class vehicles.
So this is 6 months starting from the audit, you think? December, January?
I think we're in it right now.
Yeah,
probably till June,
first
July.
period. Okay.
Yeah. So then what's going to happen, sorry, this is a very long answer, but what's going to happen probably around June or July, they're going to realize they have too many dollars to get out and not enough time. Because one of the things that DOJ did, and I'll go on record with this, I generally support the ideas of what's happening with Trump 2 administration. I think that the government's too big. I think it's too complicated. I think we can have procurement reform. I don't like the way that it's being executed.
What would you do differently?
I would be less mean. I'd be a little bit smarter about things. I think that, for example, as you well know, when DOJ was firing people, they didn't do it with a lot of quality. They took
That's a chainsaw.
Right
across.
Right. I would assume, I assume it's similar to somebody who does real estate development, right? And they say, hey, we have to take down this wall so that we can see the water. They take down the wall and they realize they just cut all the power lines and the water lines. And I think that you go into that thinking like, it's okay, that's replaceable, but we've got what we wanted. And I think that's the same kind of, I'd have to say it's a little bit of a ham-handed response, and I think that it's in the way that they've enacted it. So what's happened is that you have SBA, I think that SBA, the processing has been hurt. Our staff, GCBD, I think went from roughly 80 people or so in headquarters down to roughly 40.
Wow, and a lot of those were retirements.
For whatever reason, it's like they decided they didn't going to stay. And you are particularly one of the great leaders up there. And you're not there anymore. That hurts the agency. That hurts the
Well,
agency.
I'll say one reason that I'm not too disappointed that I'm not there is the small business goaling and utilization numbers.
Yep.
You were very proud of the fact that while you were associate administrator, the numbers kept going up. We would do a big deal around the scorecard.
Yep.
I found that in 2025, small businesses, and put 8A on the side, it's kind of hard to figure out what happened with 8A. It's still in flux, but small businesses that were not 8A actually went down. The amount of money going to small businesses went down. Do you think that the leadership of SBA is paying attention to that? Do they see the tie between what you're talking about with DOJ cuts and using the chainsaw instead of a scalpel as leading to this consequence? And do you think that they'll take measures to bring it back?
That's a long question. I don't know. I'm not part of that leadership, so I don't want to opine on that. But I would think that I don't like the result because all of in headquarters and in the field, I feel that they're my friends.
Sure.
Like I wish they took the body count somewhere else.
Yeah.
When we were there, SBA for GCBD, that was the largest portfolio for SBA in terms of new dollars. Right. We beat the loan programs. Yeah. Okay. I say that it's it's probably a $280 billion prime and sub industry right now. My adage with that is if you looked at if you added all the revenue from the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL and NBA, you get about 60 billion. Our industry is 280 billion. And I also think that it's a bit short-sighted to do what they did because I think that we're critical to the government hitting its procurement goals every year, not just for goaling's sake, but in terms of getting the money out, in terms of delivering bullets, boots, batteries, and medicine in a rapid ways. Because if you can't do that sole source, you have our warfighters who literally are going to suffer. They literally put their lives at risk because we can't get things to them quickly. And in taking the approach that the government has, I hope that they're mindful of that.
Can I ask you something about this memo?
Yep.
I've heard some voices from parts of the industry that seem to be associated with large primes, larger businesses, saying this whole scheme, not just 8A, but small business set-asides, are rife with fraud, waste, and abuse. And it's part of this is the YouTube video, the James O'Keefe YouTube video. It's just pass-throughs. This is not a program that's helping the warfighter, contributing to lethality, and moving America's interest past other nations. What do you think the Trump administration as a whole's view on that? What should it be? And do you think this is just a money grab by large businesses? Is there some sort of coordination going on here?
Not smart enough to know that. I think that large businesses, if you look at what happened with, let's just call it Doge, right? It's not just the small businesses that are losing contracts.
Right.
The really big businesses are losing contracts. Look what happened to Treasury, right? All the Booz Allen, gone.
Yeah.
And they could probably say, with a flick of a pen, just as easily as the small businesses. So are they aligned above my pay grade? I don't know.
Okay.
But I think that if you look at what's happening here, if I try to see the positive for it, they're trying to take fraud away. Okay? Nobody wants that. They're trying to take away DEI. I totally agree with that. And give me a minute and I'll tell you why. And then they're trying to make sure that anybody who actually qualifies for these programs gets in. Okay? So a little bit of inside baseball. You and I look at this industry a lot more than others, but think about what happened the previous 4 years, right? How do you have the most processing of 8A applications ever when the computer doesn't work? How do you have 8A in 1 day? It demeans our entire system. And so the problem is that when you're dealing with politics, in my opinion, you're dealing with optics. And going back to your original question, Secretary Hegseth, I think that's the way to address him. And if it's not, then I apologize. But Secretary Hegseth, in my opinion, if you listen to his video, one of the first things he says is, we have a program called the 8A program. I didn't even know there was an 8A program. Okay, so it leads me to believe that he's speaking rhetorically, but there is some truth in the rhetoric, okay? If you have people that are committing fraud, nobody wants that. If they're making awards based on appearance rather than merit, I don't like that either. And if people who should be in the program or qualified don't get in, I think that's unfair too. Okay? I don't like the execution of how it happens.
But listen,
sure.
On the numbers with 8A approvals, and Administrator Loeffler came out with a press release and said, I forget the number under the Biden administration, they approved 600 companies, and we've approved 60. Actually, I found that since August 15th, there has not been a single 8A approval. So the number is actually 0, which is a very small number, I keep saying. It's a very small number. Is that intended to kill the program? Why do you go all the way? Sure, maybe people got in that you don't agree or that it's become too aligned with DEI, but going all the way to 0 is a big step.
No, I agree. I'd rather look at the numbers that we had, right? Somewhere between that, I think is fair. And then as you and I know, they put out a number, I think you even reported the numbers like 60 something, right? But 40 of it was from 2024, and the other 20 were basically special cases, okay? And so I agree, they've done basically nothing. They're still processing, they're just slow. And I think that under the old system, if you don't like the way that they were being processed, you have to slow down. You have to change that process. So I think that I wish that what they would have done is be more transparent. To say, we're changing the process.
Yeah.
Not,
unless you look into the numbers, you don't know that the number is zero. But what could be happening, and I think you suspect this as well, is the resources that would be working on applications are moving to audit, data call, enforcement. So tell me your thoughts on the 8A data call. How did your firms at FedSol survive the data call? What should they look forward to next?
I think I'm 30 for 30. I couldn't help everybody, but the firms that I helped, I think we did it right. I read things. First thing I said was, don't expect leniency from this administration.
Yes, you were out very early on LinkedIn saying, hey, get your stuff in, answer every question, don't expect leniency.
Yeah, the information I had was that there was a very weird reading of what they were going to do, and I heard that at some point, if 2025 finishes, then you're supposed to provide 2025 closed by January 19th or whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. Thought, well, that's impossible. I had firms, they didn't like me, I'm sure. We literally worked through Christmas and up to New Year's. But at the end of the day, I said, it's either that or I think that you potentially will get kicked out for being incomplete. And that part of...
So even like technical things like
if they're using this is the old thing that they used to do with SBA. When in doubt, kick it out. And I think that if you look at SBA headquarters, where they've decimated the staff, and at the time, I think Mr. Penny was the one that was initiating the audit, and you're openly wondering, how's he going to do that with so few people?
Trey Penny, the former associate administrator.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, they're gonna go fast and furious through this stuff, and it's just if you're not on time, and if you're not complete, then those are two reasons where they can kick you out, and then they'll make you fight your way back in. And most small businesses aren't going to do that.
Wow.
So now I hear that they're even starting to do the audit, and the audit is starting to look at people at economic disadvantage. And I think a lot of people are going to be getting more letters.
So tell me about that economic disadvantage. That came out early. I think the day the data call came out. I heard about it from you, by the way. Called me at 9 o'clock that morning and said, did you hear this? And so I came online maybe a few hours later and said, they're going to be looking at economic disadvantage. Yeah. And so how many firms do you think are out there that don't understand economic disadvantage? What do they need to know about it?
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess with numbers. Ethnically impossible, not good with numbers. But I think that you have to be mindful. And I think that what's going to happen, or what has been happening, is you've been suspended. They're at least giving due process. So then they're going to have to come hire you. They're going to have to come hire me to say, how do we fix this? So to anybody that's listening now, I would go make sure that your numbers have you still meeting the economic disadvantage thresholds, and be prepared with an explanation. Because you'll have an opportunity, but you don't know when they're going to get that and how fast they're going to need that information. So do it now.
Do you see any scrutiny on social disadvantage through the data call?
Potentially. There were, out of the 1,000 or so, that a little bit more than that, maybe 1,100 or so.
Right, 1,100 that were suspended.
Okay. Then there were roughly half of those, 400 or 500, that were suspended, I think, just for, they didn't have any business. And forgot what the question was.
Social disadvantage.
So the next thing that's going to potentially happen, I think if I read them right, they're going to look at social disadvantage, and they're going to look at that social disadvantage narrative. Now there's allegations over the last year or so that they were or the previous administration, the Ultima case came out, and the response was social disadvantage narrative, okay? And so I think you were still working with the agency at that, and I was mindful of the fact that SBA regulations require that social disadvantage is chronic and long-standing. It can't be fleeting. So it made me a little bit slack-jawed to learn that SBA says, we're only requiring 2 incidents. Between you and me, how do 2 separate incidents match the letter of the law?
Speaking of math, the reason it's 2 is 2 is more than 1.
Thanks.
So incidents, plural, is 2.
But I think No, but I think though that before, in the beginning, all of my clients, I think we put in 6.
Wow. Okay.
And it was just because it was chronic and long-standing. So I think potentially if you look at things and people are skirting economic disadvantage, then the social disadvantage, if that's next, they're going to probably look at social disadvantage that only have two incidents that are still in.
So that's one tip, is look at having more than 2 incidents.
Yeah, and then also that feeds into the narrative of, see, DEI. We let them in because they had a good social disadvantage narrative, and that didn't even comply with the law.
SBA issued guidance on social disadvantage, and it says SBA will not approve admissions to the program based on the Biden-era social disadvantage narratives.
Yeah. And
then it also says, when considering whether an individual has suffered social disadvantage, the GCBD will consider whether the individual has been a victim of illegal or radical DEI policies or illegal affirmative action policies, and has otherwise been the victim of discriminatory practices such as race-based quotas, set-asides, or hiring targets. What do you do with the narrative now? Is there even a narrative?
To be honest, I think they conflated it.
Yeah.
There's also that portion of it where they're preferring white companies.
Yeah, the press release says white males specifically.
But in my mind, what does that tell me? It tells me that they don't even read the regulations. It's already in there. What I felt was, I'm going to say this was the late 90s when SBA was challenged on the Hill, and we had to respond to the Hill to make it clear that white males or non-presumptive groups could get into the program. So that's where if you look at the eligibility regs, the first one is presumptive groups, second one is tribes, and the third one is if you don't fit, this is what you have to do. And that was basically the basis for the social disadvantage narrative. So we've used that a long time ago. White males could easily get into the program as long as they qualified.
Yep, you and I know white males that are in the program.
So
I've been in the program.
So when they put this in here, it made me realize whoever's writing this is unfamiliar with the regulations because it's already in there.
Yeah, you can go and find 8A companies. I made a list on my website of go to their about page and you see a white male at the head of the company that are in the 8A program, benefiting from the 8A program. So it sounds like you don't see this as really a change. It's just this has always been available. Or do you?
If I have to be complimentary to the administration, they're at least finally coming around to, okay, we're running the program, we're getting back to the law, we're taking out DEI, and then what was the other one? Yeah. Oh, and then we're looking for fraud.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand the difference between DEI. I said this a long time ago. This is probably in January, but DEI, the difference between DEI is that if you look like you and you look like me, and when it was presumed, we get in. That's the only criteria, okay? The difference between that and 8A does look at race as one criteria out of several. And looking like you and looking like me alone doesn't get you certification. In fact, everyone that applies for 8A doesn't get it. It's not like a driver's license. You have to prove economic disadvantage. You have to prove competence in business. You have to prove ownership and control. You have to look out for negative control. And we had very good analysts that were doing that. I loved our staff. They did a great job. And so, very simply, they did a great job at complying with the law. We let good companies in. We let qualified companies into the program. And I think that the Biden administration got away from that. And we should fix that. But I don't like the way that they're fixing it by just taking a chainsaw to everybody.
But you did say on LinkedIn that these actions, and I don't know if you were referring to this memo in particular, but at least they keep the program active, potentially for this other group, for white men, or we can argue about whether they were available before. But there are people out there that want to say, let's just end the 8A program altogether. Let's get rid of, not just the 8A program, get rid of set-aside. So in a way, do you think that this could end up helping the program down the line?
I think it depends if you believe the rhetoric or not. People want to do something quick. You've seen other political administrations. They want to do something quick so they can get a promotion and then leave, okay? The reason why some people didn't like me was because I knew that I was only there to fix the program, and I wanted to bring back to the rule of law. So does this help people? Does this help people want to get rid of the program? Sure it does. Can they do it? No, I don't think so.
Why is that?
First and foremost, I believe in the law, and this is the way our country works. Mrs. Loeffler, even in her testimony, at the very end, you had Mrs. Ernst, a Republican, and Senator Markey, who is a Democrat, both asking her, are you going to apply the law? Are you going to stay within the law? And she said yes. Mm-hmm. The Small Business Act, again, protects everything generally decent about the small business utilization, and it's reinforced by 13 CFR. None of that is really changing significantly. And until that does, I'm not going to worry. Will it change the program? I think they're going to do as much as they can, hopefully, to get back to running it per the law. Because I bet if you look at things, to your point, and looking at it with race, I would guess that there's a disproportionate amount of minorities that got into the program over non-minorities. And I use that in the general sense, not in the specific sense.
Yeah, on raw numbers, that's true. But the fastest growing group was
right.
white men, since Osmo really opened that up.
Yeah.
This memo does state SBA is rewriting its regulations. They're going to change social disadvantage. They're probably going to take out the presumption. There may be other things that are coming into those regulations. Is there unfinished business from Trump 1 that you think this Trump 2 group will come in and address, or other areas that they may be looking at when they release these regulations?
At this point, no. I'm hopeful. But I think right now it has the entire industry on a defensive posture. And at the end of the day, that's not growth. That's more like you can play offense and grow, or you can play defense and clean up. And I think that's what they're trying to do.
So speaking of defense, one of the big news stories from this week was the cancellation of CIO SP4. A lot of small businesses put investment in trying to get CIO SP4. What are your thoughts on that, and how do they regroup after that big cancellation?
I'm guessing with government they're not going to regroup. They're just going to wait, and then they'll do it again later.
There'll be something else.
But yeah, a lot of wasted time. But I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to defense. The government, with the standards that they put for selecting companies, could not defend why they picked one company over another.
And those are all the protests.
Yep, all the protests. Yep. Okay. And I think that, honestly, I think that protests in general are going to be a strategy going forward. If the market right now is everybody's trying to move to best-in-class vehicles, there's not enough room on the bus for everybody. And I think the protest is, look, we have nothing to lose by protesting. And this goes back to the old protest strategies. But the one thing that stops a procurement is a pre-award protest. I think you can see a bunch of them. You'll probably get rich doing that.
Let's see if they come out with more vehicles. They're not supposed to do that anymore. They're supposed to keep with what they have.
Yeah.
GSA schedule and Oasis Plus and 8A Star. So good for you if you're on a vehicle, because now you don't have that competition from CIO SP4.
I mean, so you haven't asked this, but I also see that the pathway forward for a lot of small businesses, if you look at things, the reason why there's so much fear, the people that should fear and the people that don't like what's happening, and I'm firmly on the side of small business, but the people that are afraid of all of the change are for the small businesses, are the ones that when you go and you talk to a contracting officer, if you decide to go do that, they say 8A first. Every one of my clients for the last 25 years or so, we have a talk. I said, I got you into the 8A program. All right, so if you want me to put you on one of my teams, here's what we do. We never mention 8A. I'm always irreverent and I joke, but I say, if you look like you and me, okay, it's gonna come up. But what doesn't come up, you need to lead with quality. You need to be able to say to a contracting officer, to a program manager, I understand your problem. I'm solving a problem that you know you need to solve. And I can prove it. I can prove it in a way that you see it with past performance, with experience. Here's my references. Call them. The line I used to say is, call them and ask my references. I'll live and die by whatever they say. Very strong. Okay. I have no trouble. You have to be willing to engage and start a conversation. but every relationship from government contracts to partners to boyfriends, girlfriends, and friends, everybody on the other side is just thinking, how can you help me? You can tell me anything you want, but how can you help me? And we have to do a better job of preparing companies to do that. State that you understand the client, state that you can solve that problem, okay? Everybody can be solutions-based. You can be a prime, you could be a sub, you could have a team, or you could do staffing. Everybody can do that. And if you don't know how to do that, look at all of the consultants and experts on LinkedIn, right? They'll give you all the information, right? But education is not action. Certifications are not capabilities. And that's one of the things that we focus on is not only will I tell you what to do, I'll show you how to do it. There's not too many of us that are out there.
So let's say
it's necessary.
SBA is mostly frozen up the 8A approval process as far as certifications. Is it worth going after women-owned, service-able vet, hub zone? When you were in the Trump administration, you were a big proponent of the hub zone program. Do you continue to believe in the hub zone program? Do you think it's worth it to go after that?
I think that all of the certifications are worth having because they're still goaling at the end of the day.
Okay.
But they just you have to say that at the end. Boyfriends and girlfriends where it's like, look, I got money, I can take you out on a date, I can do this, and I have a car. But you can't, I think that you have to look at it this way. The people that are not afraid of any of this, to be overly general, they're the companies that don't qualify for any of these certifications. How do they do it? Okay? I know, but they start with, I can't rely on what I look, can't rely on an identity. I can rely on my quality.
So they're looking at problem solving.
Oh my God, yeah. For anything. Maybe this is Asian dad, but I don't know about you. I've never been able to rely on what I look like. My father wouldn't let me do that.
That's why we wanted to be doctors and became lawyers, which was a big disappointment.
Yeah, it was a big disappointment. They say, you're on your own. Right? Yeah. Don't embarrass us. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's just, okay, you have a chance. And so what should companies that haven't entered the game understand? Start by looking at all the public information that's there. The mission of the agencies. The president has a budget or he has an agenda. And then you look down and you say, which agencies are responsible for those parts of the mission? And which divisions have those parts of the mission? Which programs have those parts of the mission? All that's public information. You'll find out who actually runs those things. But then you've got to do your homework.
So that's just market research. And
so it's funny is I've always told you this. Whenever somebody says just, the next words come out is what they marginalize. And it's not just market research. Market research is part of business development. It's the one thing that all agencies think, or all small businesses think they can do. The only people that don't need to do business development, in my opinion, are companies that have too many contracts. I've been doing this stuff for 30 years. I don't know many of those companies.
There's always another opportunity around the corner.
Anyway, it's the new companies have to go back to learning the old-fashioned way of starting a business when they didn't have a DEI factor to consider. The companies that are already doing business, the government contracting officers are going to love you, but you have to start speaking in a language that they understand. And their understanding is, I have this big problem. Can you help me to solve it? All of that's public information. Do the homework. That's what it is. The 8A program is probably no longer going to be in Ozempic for fat people. Got to do a little bit of working out and stuff like that. But the main important thing is it's still there, and it's still possible. And it all still works. The agencies still have goals. And I think that at this point now, everybody's in a defensive posture, but that defensive posture is going to change. And it's going to go back to goaling. So just be ready.
Something else that's still there is the Mentor Protege program. And
love it.
You made some policy changes to the Mentor Protege program when you were in office.
Yep.
Give you a chance to reflect. How do you perceive how SBA has run the Mentor Protege program? Do you still look at it as an opportunity? What's your advice about the program?
I'll tell you this. When I was there, we treated the organization like it was a business. And the way that we would get our bonuses, if you will, was when we had small businesses that had contracts pending. And so what we would end up doing, we had a policy at that point that if the people called, remember I used to do that crazy thing, I'd give out my cell phone number, I'd give out my email and stuff.
Might be doing that at the end of this podcast.
Probably. But so at the end of the day, if somebody called me or anyone and they said, hey, I've got a contract pending and you guys are the holdup, we had a policy that a lot of people at SBA didn't like, but I said, move it to the top of the stack.
Yeah.
Because every dollar that we get, they've already done the marketing, they've done the hard part, and we shouldn't be the ones that are holding it up. I think that they've gone back to, you're in line and we'll get to you when we get to you. In terms of mentor-protege, I think it's still an incredibly important, and I think it's an incredibly useful tool, particularly now. If you're waiting for your 8A certification, based at least on what we know up to now, you didn't get it last year. And I don't know if you're going to get it this year.
Yeah.
So what do you do in the meantime? You've got to do different things. I would form mentor-protege, or I'd form joint ventures. And why would you get on a team with joint venture? Because you solve a problem that small business needs to have. You can take Mighty Mouse and Superman and you can combine them in a joint venture. Okay, you could send it to SBA for sole source contracts. Something that people don't really realize is that SBA, even if it's a competitive 8A, they still look at it after the prospective awardee has been selected. But joint venture is a great way to team quickly, be on a team, and still build your business.
So, as we're looking at this new environment with the data call, this Hegseth memo, the attention on SBA, what actions would you recommend to a small business to compete in 2026?
Educate yourself. Learn. The core training that we have, and I have a new company that's going to start, but we've taken my private strategies and then we're going to try and scale it. But what I tell most of my clients is, I check to see what's your mission. Your mission defines what's your message when you go talk to people. And then laws of attraction, that's going to define your market. Okay? And so the main thing for people in the old industry is this. For God's sakes, the first thing out of your mouth should not be, and I'm 8A, and I'm women-owned, and I'm service-disabled veteran, okay? I think you have to lead with your quality and just say, I understand the problem you have. I looked it up. I want to confirm that you still have that problem. I've solved that problem in other agencies or in commercial. I can prove it so that when you select me as being the best company for this, like Mr. Trump wants, you can defend it. Oh, and I also am in line for, or I just received my small business certification. Okay.
People want to hear more about this. How do they find you, Robb?
Yeah, they can come through you, or my phone number is 301-996-8696. Text me. The information is generally free. If you need me to do something for you, if I need to execute for you, I'll charge you something fair. But I love this stuff, and I appreciate you having me on here. But I want to tell you, I hope I don't get emotional with this. I love the industry. I love this mission. And when I selected you and I asked you to join me, it was the right choice. I think you are one of the best leaders for policy that's in this industry. I think SBA made a mistake, but their mistake is the industry's gain. You are definitely one of the leaders in terms of understanding how does policy affect small business performance and utilization. It's very useful, particularly now. I hope people keep coming to you.
Thanks so much for that. Robb Wong, thank you for being on the show. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.